Some women don't need striking beauty, don't need loudness, and don't have to chase anyone. Yet everyone who meets them remembers them. Everyone wants to be near them. It's not because they're lucky, nor because they've memorized seduction secrets. Their magnetism comes from somewhere else, a kind of energy that cannot be bought or faked, one that only emerges when they have walked an inner path few dare to take. Carl Jung believed that most of us live our entire lives like actors, wearing a mask that fits society, hiding our shadows, and following a script written by others. But one day, there comes a moment when you look into the mirror and suddenly realize, I've done everything to be loved, but I no longer know who I am. From that moment, another journey begins, a journey of inner shifts. And when a woman dares to fully walk this path, she doesn't just change how the world sees her. More importantly, she changes how she sees herself. In today's video, we'll explore 5 inner shifts Carl Jung believed can turn a woman into the most radiant, alive version of herself. This is not a list of beauty tips or tricks to be loved. This is a map to a rare kind of magnetism, where you don't need to pursue anyone, yet everyone wants to be near you. Are you ready to step into this journey? Number 1. Accepting and embracing your own shadow. There's something almost no one teaches you growing up, yet it determines the deepest kind of magnetism a woman can have. Allure does not come from a face that is always glowing, from pleasing words, or perfectly curated social media images. It comes from something deeper, from a living depth that only those who dare to face their own shadow possess. From childhood, we are taught to hide parts of ourselves labeled as unacceptable, anger, weakness, fear, and even primal desires branded as ugly. These parts are pushed deep down into the psyche, into what Carl Jung, the great psychologist, called the shadow. And no matter how much you try to forget, the shadow doesn't disappear. It waits quietly, influencing how you love, how you react, even the people you choose to let into your life. The shadow within us is like a deep lake at night. From the surface, all you see is cold, flat blackness. But if you dare to sit by its shore and look longer, you begin to notice the stars reflected, and the water is no longer a dark abyss, but a mirror. Only when a woman dares to sit by that lake, instead of turning away in fear, does she find a light she could not have found anywhere else. Many women live like seasoned actresses in a social play. They smile at the right times, say the things people want to hear, suppress anger and hurt to keep the peace. They've learned to appear positive, even when their hearts are breaking, always presenting a pleasant version so as not to discomfort anyone. Outwardly, everything seems perfect. Inwardly, a fatigue and emptiness slowly grows, because deep down they know no one truly sees them, and even they are losing touch with their real self. Jung once said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." When a woman is brave enough to sit with the ugly, the weak, the longing, and the fearful parts of herself, she becomes the kind of person everyone wants to be near. Not because she is perfect, but because she is so vividly real and rare. I once heard a friend tell of a chance encounter with a woman during a mountain hike. She was walking alone, not in a group, her steps steady, her eyes focused yet relaxed. When they spoke, she casually mentioned there had been a time when she lost everything, her job, her love, even her sense of purpose, and it took her months just to relearn how to get out of bed each morning. She didn't tell the story as a complaint or a plea for sympathy. Her tone was calm, almost light, as though those cracks were now simply a natural part of her. It wasn't the drama of her story that left an impression, but her serenity. Those around her felt an energy both deep and safe, and found it hard to look away. This is no accident. That woman wasn't just confident or independent in the way self-help books describe. She had walked through her own darkness, faced the wounds most people run from, and that gave her a kind of strength no one could give or take away. Jung often emphasized that the shadow is not the enemy, but the rejected part of us. When repressed, it surfaces as impulsive reactions, jealousy, fear, desperate attempts to be accepted. But when faced and embraced, it becomes a source of vitality, bringing depth, passion, and a calm energy that draws others without them knowing why. There's a paradox all these women understand. When you dare to acknowledge your weakness, others don't see you as weak, they feel your true strength. Because almost everyone carries wounds, but very few feel safe enough to let others see them. When a woman can say, "I've collapsed, I've made mistakes, I've hurt so deeply I thought I'd never rise again," without needing to play the victim or seek praise, she becomes a mirror for others. A mirror that shows cracks don't diminish our worth. They make us real. If you've ever found yourself stuck in a cycle of relationships or situations that keep hurting you, remember Jung's words. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. But when you face, name, and embrace it, you break that cycle. You no longer seek people to fill your emptiness. You don't overreact to a stray comment, and you don't love to be saved. You love because you've already saved yourself. Close your eyes for a moment and ask yourself, is there a part of you you've always acted like doesn't exist? A memory, a fear, a longing you've never dared to name? If so, this is your starting point. Not by banishing it, but by whispering, "I see you. You belong to me too." And if what you just read stirred something in you, a memory, a feeling, or even a brief moment of resonance, leave one word in the comments: shadow. Because the moment you dare to name your shadow, you are already stepping into the journey of becoming the kind of woman everyone wants to be near. Not because she is perfect, but because she is whole. Number 2, from seeking validation to self-validation. After a woman begins to reconcile with her inner shadow, a natural shift occurs. She slowly releases her need for external validation. This isn't a small change, it is a silent rebirth, one that reshapes how she sees herself and how she moves through every connection. Most people, almost by reflex, live as though their worth must be granted. A compliment can lift them to the skies, while a criticism or a single indifferent glance can send them plummeting into despair. Their inner life becomes a tiring tightrope act, with emotions swayed by the world's reactions. And this constant instability means they never truly feel at peace. The woman who has gone through this shift is different. She is like a mountain standing steady against any wind. The wind may howl, carrying praise or scorn, but her roots are deep. She doesn't need anyone to hold her up. She can smile at a compliment, but doesn't let it become the only fuel for her confidence. She can love deeply, but doesn't use love as proof that she is worthy. She doesn't need to be chosen to feel valuable, because she has already chosen herself first. This changes every connection around her. Instead of seeking love, friendship, or work to fill the gaps within, she brings her own wholeness into each, and creates bonds no longer burdened by fear or expectation. Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." The greatest privilege in life isn't being applauded, it's daring to live as yourself, even if not everyone likes it. When a woman can stand in her true essence, she not only escapes the exhausting game of praise and criticism, but also becomes a quiet magnet. Not because she flaunts anything, but because she radiates something rare in a world obsessed with approval, a steadiness that asks for nothing. Picture this: a late afternoon in a cafe. Around her, people are busy snapping photos, adjusting their posture to look perfect under the lights, chatting just loudly enough to be overheard by the next table. In a quiet corner, a woman sits reading. No heavy makeup, no constant glances to see who's watching. When an unexpected rain begins outside, she looks up, smiles softly, sets her book down, and watches the rain fall for a while, without rushing to capture the moment for others to see. That simple image draws a few curious glances her way. Not because she is envy-inducing, but because her stillness reminds others they too can slow down and exist without needing to prove anything. In love, this quality is even more striking. The self-validating woman doesn't enter relationships to erase her loneliness or to be chosen. She loves it as an act of freedom, not salvation. She can open her heart, give and receive, while still maintaining healthy boundaries, because for her, love isn't about merging, but about resonance. She doesn't need to read minds, play silent games, or fear that honesty will drive someone away. And paradoxically, because she doesn't cling, her love feels transparent, and that makes the man by her side cherish her even more, because he knows her affection isn't manipulative, but real. This doesn't mean she's immune to emotions or untouched by praise and criticism. She still feels warm when appreciated, still feels a pang when misunderstood. But these emotions no longer define who she is. They pass through, while her core, the belief, I am enough, even when no one sees, remains firm as her anchor. And it is this belief that lets her release what no longer fits without collapsing, and welcome what's new without fear. If you want to feel this yourself, try a simple exercise tonight. Stand before a mirror. No makeup, no flattering lighting, no one watching. Just you, with yourself. Look into the reflected eyes and say slowly, I am enough. I don't need another round of applause. Repeat it every day, not to convince anyone else, but to truly hear yourself. One day you might notice your heart beating more slowly, your mind quieter, and your relationships feeling lighter. Not because they've changed, but because you've changed the way you stand in this world. And when a woman reaches this state, releasing her need for validation, she becomes the kind of person everyone wants to seek out. Not because she is perfect, but because she feels like a clear spring in the middle of a desert, a place where others can breathe, be themselves, and reconnect with a quiet part of their own soul they had long forgotten. When you're near such a person, you feel something contagious. You want to slow down, listen to yourself more, and without realizing it, you begin to need less external approval too. Because this calm energy doesn't just make her the kind of woman everyone wants. It becomes a mirror reminding everyone. True worth isn't something given by others, but something we dare to feel from deep within. And as this woman continues her journey, a deeper shift begins to unfold. No longer living to seek validation, she starts learning to be fully present with herself, something we'll explore in the next part. Number 3, knowing how to be alone and nurture your inner world. There is a kind of magnetism that cannot be bought with clothes, appearance, or glamorous parties. It's the magnetism of a woman who is truly comfortable with herself, even in silence. She doesn't need noise to feel she exists, doesn't need constant messages to feel valued, doesn't need watching eyes to feel enough. This energy flows from what Carl Jung once described as a connection with the deepest self, a state where a person is no longer empty inside, so they no longer radiate neediness, no longer turn others into emotional supply stations. Our modern world pushes us to stay constantly connected. Social media makes us fear missing out. Conversations make us fear silence. Relationships make us believe that if no one reaches for us one day, we are somehow less worthy. But the woman who can be alone without feeling lonely is completely different. When no one is around, she doesn't panic, doesn't rush to fill the void, doesn't scroll endlessly, doesn't dive into meaningless flings, doesn't bury herself in a packed schedule just to avoid the emptiness. Instead, she uses the stillness to return to herself, sometimes by simply sipping tea, reading a few pages, writing a short entry, or just watching her thoughts drift by like clouds. I once knew a young woman who, after a long-term relationship ended, spent countless nights curled up in tears, blasting loud music, or rushing into empty outings just to forget the hollow feeling. But one day, exhausted from running, she tried something simple. Instead of filling her schedule, she learned to sit quietly with herself. At first, just short afternoons, sitting on her balcony, watching the sun set without her phone. Gradually, she began writing down her chaotic thoughts, even her fear of abandonment and desires she once felt ashamed to admit. She realized those feelings didn't destroy her. On the contrary, they slowly made her lighter. The silence she once feared became a space for healing. And once she stopped running from herself, everything changed. When she entered a new relationship, she didn't need constant texting to feel cared for, and didn't cling to someone's presence to prove her worth. She loved it as a choice, not as a means of survival. And this, the freedom, the absence of neediness, made the men she met feel drawn to her in ways they couldn't explain. Around her, they didn't feel pressured to fix her, and because of that, they treasured every moment by her side even more. This is the key difference between truly being alone and the loneliness so many fear. Loneliness is when we feel hollow and scramble to fill it, with a person, a habit, or a screen. Being alone is when we feel complete in our own space, not because we don't need anyone, but because we aren't afraid if no one is there. And paradoxically, the moment a woman no longer radiates neediness, she becomes far more attractive. Others feel at ease around her because they aren't crushed by invisible expectations, nor turned into medicine for an empty soul. Jung often emphasized that a person cannot truly mature until they dare to sit with the emptiness inside. Most of our clingy energy in love, friendships, or work comes from that fear. Fear of silence, fear of hearing the echoes within. But the woman who knows how to nurture her inner world is different. She can sit, listen to the uncomfortable memories, the untouched fears and longings, and breathe through them, rather than run. She turns those quiet spaces into places of healing. Some find this through meditation, others through creativity, writing, painting, gardening, cooking, not to produce results, but simply to feel alive, to connect with a quiet current inside. And once she learns this, something special happens. When she steps out into the world, every relationship feels lighter. She no longer seeks others to rescue her, so the people around her no longer feel pressured to fill any void. Picture two kinds of love. One constantly needs reassurance, endless texting, anxiety when replies are delayed, leaning on promises as a way to self-soothe. The other is when two people can spend a night apart, each enjoying their own space and activity, and when they reunite, their conversations feel richer, their bond deeper. The woman who nurtures her inner world is the embodiment of the second kind, love that isn't tied to control or anxiety, but to freedom and durability. If you want to touch this state, try this. One evening, turn off all social media. Don't switch on the TV. Don't search for distractions. Sit with a candle, a cup of tea, and just yourself. Write down whatever comes up, messy, unpolished, illogical. At first you might feel restless, as if your whole body is resisting the quiet. But if you observe even that discomfort and keep breathing, the layers of anxiety begin to soften. Beneath it all, a stillness emerges, a stillness no one can give and no one can take away. From that foundation, every connection, including love, transforms. A relationship is no longer a place to escape emptiness, but a space to share. When someone no longer needs another to fill them, love naturally takes on a freer, lighter tone. It's not a binding cage, but more like a green, open garden. Anyone who enters feels they can breathe, knowing they are there by choice, not as a crutch. And paradoxically, the less she tries to hold on, the more others want to stay. Not because of mind games or manipulation, but because of the rare calm energy she radiates. People come, not to flee the world, but to remind themselves that even in chaos, there is a quiet rhythm to return to. It's this inner stillness that opens an even greater door. When no longer ruled by fear of emptiness or dependency, she begins to dare to ask the biggest question. If I'm not living to please anyone, not living to fill anything, what is my true path? This is when a deeper shift begins, the journey Carl Jung called individuation, where a woman no longer walks the path society or family wrote for her, but begins to write her own chapter. Number 4. Living your own individuation journey, becoming yourself. It's no coincidence that Carl Jung considered individuation, the journey of becoming oneself, the deepest aim of human life. Most insecurity, fear, and the sense of not enough stem from living lives written by others. We wear clothes that don't fit, walk roads society labels safe, and then wonder why, despite everything looking stable, we still feel hollow. Individuation, according to Jung, isn't just about finding your passion or being different. It's a journey of touching the core of your being, where you dare to remove every mask, persona, and face even your shadow. Only when you accept both your light and your darkness, and dare to walk a path no one else mapped for you, do you find the self, the whole, authentic center. In this state, you are no longer ruled by external expectations, but become a source of free, grounded energy. A woman once shared at a seminar that she had everything society praises: a high-paying job, a happy family, a beautiful home. But every night when the lights went out, she felt like she was living inside a velvet-lined box, soft but suffocating. She realized everything she had was simply what's right in the eyes of others, not what she truly longed for. The decision to quit her job to pursue painting hit her family like a shock. Friends mocked her, calling her crazy. She herself felt lost at times, but each canvas she painted, even unsold, even unpraised, gave her a feeling she'd never known: aliveness. She no longer existed to please, but began to live. And once she stopped needing to fit the mold, people were drawn to her even more. Her husband loved her more deeply, not for financial success, but for the free energy she radiated, something most craved but rarely dared to touch. Individuation doesn't always come from grand decisions like changing careers or leaving a relationship. Sometimes it's simply daring to say no to a decayed friendship, daring to admit you don't need to chase a beauty standard, or choosing a rhythm unlike others, reading instead of partying, walking alone instead of texting all day to feel loved. Each time you're honest with yourself, even in small ways, you move closer to who you truly are. Jung once said, "Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes." A woman who dares to look inward and ask, "What do I truly want?" is not rebelling to make noise. She isn't fighting society to be different, but to be real. And this state, paradoxically, is what makes her magnetic. In a rushing world, she stands like a mirror, reminding others there's another way, not easy, but truly worth walking. Coco Chanel once embodied this truth. Born into poverty, motherless young, raised in a convent, Chanel had nothing but her hands and an unyielding will. In a world where women were forced into stiff corsets, serving as ornaments for men and society's standards, she chose the unwalked road. She broke it all. Chanel stripped silhouettes down, removed suffocating details, and created clothes that were elegant yet freed women's bodies. She once said, "The most courageous act is still to think for yourself," aloud. Chanel didn't just design clothes. She redesigned how women showed up in the world. Of course, she was criticized, labeled a rebel fighting traditional femininity. But instead of proving herself or chasing acceptance, Chanel let her creations speak, and in time, the whole world listened and was drawn to her. When she dared to step off the safe road and chose the journey of becoming herself, the path Jung called individuation, that free energy made Chanel an icon, not just of fashion, but of a woman living true to her soul. In Jungian psychology, she embodies the woman who has transcended the persona, the safe mask, and reconciled with the shadow, her flaws and longings alike. Once no longer ruled by the fear of rejection or others' gaze, she becomes entirely different. She doesn't need to flaunt, doesn't need to prove, yet her presence still draws others in. Imagine a party where everyone is posturing, flaunting achievements, seeking approving eyes, terrified of fading into the background. In that room, a woman enters. Not flashy, not loud. When asked about her work, she doesn't hesitate to admit she's trying something new, even if it's uncertain. In conversation, she listens more than she interrupts. She does nothing to impress, yet her honesty quiets the room, and before long, all eyes gravitate toward her. Not because she's perfect, but because she feels like a breath of fresh air in a stifling room. Individuation is not an easy path. It forces you to face judgment, uncertainty, and the deep fear of being left behind. But because it's hard, it creates a magnetism that can't be faked. The woman who dares to live her true path doesn't need to pull anyone along, but people naturally move closer, not to copy her, but to feel the freedom they've never faced within themselves. And if one day you feel like you're living inside a velvet-lined box, soft but lifeless, ask yourself the question Jung suggests. If there were no fear and no one to judge me, what would I truly want? The answer may be unclear at first, but daring to ask is the first step. Because each time you're honest, even through a small choice, you move closer to your true self, where freedom and vitality don't need to be borrowed from the outside, but flow from within. Number 5. From control to trust and letting go. There is a kind of magnetism almost everyone craves but few attain. The magnetism of a soul that no longer tries to control everything, but knows how to surrender to the flow of life. In a world where everyone wants to script love, work, the future, even their own emotions, the woman who knows how to trust and let go radiates a different energy, light, serene, and paradoxically, that very quality makes her a natural center without even trying. Some women grow up with a habit they don't even notice, always keeping everything under control. Not out of ambition, but because deep down there's a vague fear that if they don't plan, don't arrange, don't keep things in order, everything will fall apart. They learn to read faces to avoid conflict, keep the flame in love at any cost, and manage every detail so no one can criticize. But the more they strain to control, the more suffocating it all becomes. Because the simple truth is, no one feels free living in a space that is always tightly gripped, not even them. Carl Jung once said, "What you resist persists." The more we try to control our emotions, others' reactions, the more we get stuck in tension. The woman who learns the art of trust and letting go doesn't do it out of laziness or apathy. She has gone through enough rounds of straining, draining herself to maintain an image, a relationship, a result, until she realizes the most beautiful things often arrive when we stop forcing them. Imagine a river. If you try to hold the water in your hands, it slips through your fingers and vanishes. But if you let yourself float, the water lifts you, carries you farther than your strength could alone. The woman who can let go is like someone who has learned to swim with the current, not rigid, not resisting, but moving with the natural flow. Her presence feels the same, unforced, unhurried, yet you sense a quiet power, as if she is held up by something greater than herself. A friend once told me about a woman he met during a week-long meditation retreat. She wasn't the most striking, nor did she try to stand out. During the long sitting sessions, when many were restless, unable to stay still, she remained calm, her breath steady, her eyes not seeking anyone to talk to or cling to. When group discussions came, she listened far more than she spoke, and when she did speak, her words were simple, yet touched, something many couldn't name. He said being near her made everyone slow down. No one felt the urge to overperform or prove anything. Her energy spread like a still lake, calming everything around it. This doesn't mean she gives up or doesn't care about results. She still loves, still works, still sets goals. But the difference is this: she doesn't let results define her worth. She doesn't believe she must hold onto her lover at all costs to prove she's lovable, nor that she must control every word to avoid conflict. She dares to let things unfold, and trusts that what is truly hers will stay, and what leaves is what needs to leave. And this serenity, paradoxically, draws love, respect, and opportunities to her more naturally than ever before. In love, this quality shines even brighter. The woman still living in controlling energy often doesn't realize she turns love into a chess match, predicting every move, reading every signal, trying strategies to keep someone close. But such a relationship is exhausting. In contrast, when a woman knows how to let go, her love becomes an open space, not a place for tests, comparisons, or plans for every moment, but a space where both can breathe freely. The man beside such a woman often feels he doesn't need to perform or fight to sustain the relationship. He can simply be himself. And that is what makes him want to stay. Letting go is also a kind of courage. To release, you must accept you cannot control everything, and that touches the deepest fears. Fear of loss, rejection, abandonment. The woman who can do this has already walked through her own darkness, sat with her fear, cried through sleepless nights, and realized she survived. She knows her value doesn't lie in what she can hold, but in how she can stand steady when her hands are empty. When you dare to let things be, things come more easily. It's like walking into a garden with no "do not touch" signs, no fences, no one begging you to stay. You'll naturally want to linger longer, because it is precisely that freedom that makes us appreciate it. The trusting, letting go woman is the same. She doesn't flood phones with messages to confirm affection, doesn't play psychological games to keep people, doesn't turn into a detective over a delayed reply. And because of that, people want to text her, want to come closer, because they feel something rare. Love and connection untainted by fear. If you want to start touching this state, try this. One evening, place your hand on your heart and ask, what am I trying so hard to control that it's draining me? Write everything, the relationship, the work outcome, your image in someone's eyes. Then breathe deeply and ask, what would happen if I loosened my grip just a little? At first, it may feel like free-falling. Your heart races, your mind fidgets. But if you keep breathing, you'll realize what the serene woman has long known. Most of what we fear losing, if it truly belongs to us, will find its way to stay. Carl Jung often emphasized that we cannot step into a truly alive life if we're still living in a state of clinging. The woman who knows how to let go doesn't do so because she doesn't care, but because she trusts the wisdom of a flow bigger than herself. She understands that everything, love, work, opportunity, has its own rhythm, and her role isn't to control, but to keep her heart wide and steady enough to receive. And that is what creates her irresistible magnetism. She is like a vast open sky, a quiet river, a place where anyone who enters feels lighter, and no one wants to leave. Because not everyone finds a space where they can feel that free, that safe. Thank you for staying to the very end. As you've heard these 5 inner shifts, you may realize a woman becomes magnetic not because she is perfect, but because she dares to live fully, with both her light and her shadow, her strength and her vulnerability. These shifts don't turn you into someone else. They bring you closer to your true self, someone who doesn't chase validation, doesn't grip the past, and doesn't fear losing someone just to stay whole. When you reach that state, the connections around you change too. They become lighter, clearer, and people are drawn in naturally, not because you try, but because around you, they too feel free to be themselves. So, of these 5 inner shifts, which one do you feel you need most right now? Share your reflection or your story in the comments.